Would this be the perfect copper round design for the apocalypse? Today I'm taking a quick look at the Zombucks copper round and its counterpart in silver. Stick around and I'll give you perhaps a bit of a surprising take on how I feel about this series. Hello, fellow mutants. So I saw the release of the new Zombucks Silver and Copper rounds at JM Bullion. While I've been around in other series before, I never really got into them for reasons which I'll explain later, but took note of the latest release and the way they have their own unique face values, and in retrospect, wondered why I didn't get a series of Bullion rounds that promised tongue in rotting cheek to be the currency of the apocalypse. If you've watched a few of my recent videos on copper, including one on the best designs, you'll remember that I typically don't want a date or face value on something that looks like an official US coin, mainly to distinguish it from coins such as pennies, which today have a low currency valuation. However, I do like the fictional Zombucks symbol, which is of course a Z with the vertical $sign lines through it. A couple of reasons for that. One is that it's not a real currency, so it's not subject to any preconceptions that a collapsed currency might have or negative barter potential that could linger around a silver coin with a $2 face value, for example. The other is that the values ascribed to the copper and silver variants of the designs are different and reflect a valuation difference that seems fair to me for reference in barter. For example, the new Zombucks copper round shows 3 Zombucks in value, whereas the silver one shows 75. It's worth noting that previous series, had $2 for the copper round and I believe $55 for the silver. So apparently there's even inflation in the apocalypse, but that all aside, I do think the silver pricing is a bit high, especially with the current cost of the value of the metals considered. I'll chalk that aside to the silver bugs involved with designing them and a perhaps too optimistic support for the value of their favorite metal. That said, I think silver is a worthwhile metal to invest in, whereas anyone following me would know I collect low-priced copper rounds more for their barter and utility rather than as a financial investment in the metal. I'm not a financial advisor, but I make sure to have some silver on hand for a currency collapse. Oh, and gold. Well, I'm not going to share too much about my personal stance on gold. I lost all mine during a hike in the desert. If you do like the Zombucks copper rounds, however, it's worth noting that they fall into the collectible class of copper rounds due to their limited run nature, and prior releases actually demand much higher prices than a typical copper round. So if you are into semi-numismatics or collectible coins, these ones are a pretty good bet to be worth more down the road if you go by how much the old releases are selling for now. Back to the new Zombucks designs. Here's how JM Bullion describes the new rounds. The new Zombucks World Series picks up where its predecessor left off, offering new designs with zombified undead figures. While the original collection focused on 10 historic American coin designs, each one modified to capture the undead in a post-apocalyptic world, the Zombucks World Series is going global. The first design in the new collection offers an undead twist on the Panda Bullion series. Now, One-Ox Zombucks Pandemonium copper rounds are available to you for purchase at JM Bullion. Round highlights include, and I've cut some of these down, that it offers a nominal Zombucks value, the $3 I mentioned before, or I should say, 3 Zombucks. The obverse features a zombified panda. On the reverse is the biohazard design from the original series. Mintage. Each release will be minted to demand for approximately 4 months. So if they're really popular, a lot of them would be minted. At end of that time, the final mintage for that design will be announced. No more rounds will be produced of each design after its 4-month mintage run. So that plays into the higher value I mentioned before for the older series. The world seemingly stands on the brink of an apocalypse in the 2020s. Each decade comes with theories of what singular event or cluster of events is going to bring about an apocalypse. The turn of the 20th century brought the feature of Y2K and how our over-reliance on machines might be our demise. In the 2010s, it was all about ancient mythological forecasts regarding when the world would end. Just as that fear subsided and everyone looked forward to the 2020s, another series of events served up a stark reminder that an apocalypse may, in fact, be just around the corner. When the apocalypse does come, you may want the official currency of the apocalypse in your collection. Well, all I can say to that is, indeed you may. A bullion round design, right up my alley, right? At the end of the day, I'm not sure how I feel about the Zombucks series. I'll probably ruffle a few feathers with my opinion here, but what's life worth if we all share the same opinions and likes anyway? So on the positive side, I do love the way they set the copper and silver coins up for use after the apocalypse by giving them valuations that seem to correspond more or less to their metal values. The design of this one is very cool. However, there's something that is perhaps a bit too nihilistic and negative for me about the designs that were in the previous series. A hint of something darker that I can't quite put my finger on. Perhaps it's a barely veiled but justified rage that many silver coin mini-mintage designs, such as those from Silver Shield, have shown before at the way paper silver prices are manipulated by big players in the markets and so-called banksters. I can imagine putting all my eggs in the silver basket and being resentful when it pops up to $50 a round, to only get manipulated back down again by paper trades. You may recall the design from Crescent City Silver with the grim image of a hanging in the so-named Bankster Justice Round. I can understand that sentiment, but I'm not so hard-hearted. Well, not today. Perhaps I'm too hard-headed to appreciate what's just a sarcastic and funny take on traditional coin designs that can be viewed as a bit stuffy and old-fashioned by having them all depicted as zombies. Instead, I'll ascribe my hesitance for the past several years of seeing these and similar round designs as rooting for a collapse of a financial system and a culture that I grew up respecting. Coins that I used to collect as a boy when the future for the USA seemed so bright. As much as I think the system now is corrupt beyond belief and due for a currency collapse, the accompanying societal collapse will, I think, bring misery and death of horrific proportion. And the urge to once again try failed political ideologies that only lead to more starvation and ruin, to the ultimate benefit of the few or a ruling party. Neither of those things I wish to see. Of course, being the copper mutant with all of my talk about the end of the world as we know it, you think I'd be right behind a currency of the apocalypse. And you'd be correct. Just because I don't want the end of the world to come doesn't mean I am not going to prepare for it. As for Zombucks in 2023, the rotting panda thing is a bit creepy but fun enough. I have no emotional ties to pandas, and I likely won't for the other world coins in the new series either. But the gaunt and rotting face of starving Lady Liberty brings me no joy. Just an urging to prepare. I remain lighthearted if I can about what have clearly been dark times these past few years, and am rarely filled with spite or the need to dance on the grave of the past, as it were. Nor do I cheerlead bringing it all down. That reminds me a bit too much of the way people gleefully tore down historical statues in the summer of 2020, as if erasing history would herald in a better future. A.G. Stacker recently posted a very good video about the Liberty Bell that raises some of the same sentiments in me. Definitely worth a watch. I'll link to it in the description below. Once you watch that, I think you'll understand my hesitance of supporting the Zombucks idea fully. Some things from the past can still ring true today, pun intended. All that said, at the end of the day, I'd probably pick up some pandas for fun. At least the copper designs. But would it be my choice of bullion round for the apocalypse to stack? Probably not. For now, I think I'd stick to something like these generic trade dollars. Something that harkens back to an old design, but doesn't cross the line into replica territory. Perhaps I'll make my own someday, if it can be done for a reasonable price. Perhaps that could be the goal of a 3,000 subscriber giveaway someday. Until then, you could help me get there with a subscribe and share, which of course I always appreciate, and perhaps the time will come sooner rather than later. Well, that's all for today, fellow mutants. A rather quick one. Until next time, it's Copper Mutant, signing out.